The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was heavy. It pressed against my eardrums like deep water. I sat in my leather armchair, the leather cracked and worn from 40 years of use, and I just listened to the house settle. The wooden beams groaned under the Arizona heat. The refrigerator in the kitchen hummed its erratic dying tune, but the sound I was waiting for, the soft hum of Marcus humming while he watered his tomatoes, that sound was gone forever. I picked up the porcelain cup from the side table. It was cold now, chamomile with a touch of honey, just the way he liked it. I didn't drink it. I just held it, letting the faint, stale aroma drift up to my nose. It was the smell of my morning every morning for 4 decades. Now it was just a scent memory fading a little more with every passing hour. It had been 7 days since the hospital machine stopped beeping. 7 days since the love of my life, my partner in everything from coding algorithms to planting vegetables, had let go of my hand. I looked across the room at his chair. It was a brown leather recliner bought at a garage sale in 1985. The fabric was worn on the arms where his hands had rested. It looked terrifyingly empty. I shifted in my seat and the springs squeaked in protest. I looked around the living room, to an outsider, to a stranger. This room told a very specific story. The carpet was a beige shag that had been out of style since the Carter administration. The television was a bulky box that took up half the corner. Not one of those sleek black mirrors everyone had on their walls now. The curtains were heavy, dusty velvet. It was a perfect set. That's what Marcus always called it, the camouflage. Dorothy, he would say, his eyes twinkling as he darned a sock that we could have easily replaced with 1,000 new pairs. Nobody hates a simple woman. Nobody envies a pensioner with a hole in her shoe. We had built this life, this facade, with the precision of a Swiss watch. We wanted our daughter, Rachel, to grow up understanding the weight of $1. We wanted her to know that work meant sweat, not just signing checks. We succeeded mostly. Rachel was a good kid. She worked hard in middle management. She drove a sensible car. But then she met Brandon. The doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a long, insistent press, followed immediately by 3 sharp knocks. It was a sound that demanded, not requested. It shattered the heavy silence of the house and made my heart jump, not from fear, but from a sudden, sharp exhaustion. I knew exactly who was on the other side of that oak door. I didn't get up immediately. I let them wait. I let my hands tremble just a little. I practiced the slump in my shoulders. I was Dorothy Thompson, 72 years old, a retired data entry clerk with a small pension and a broken heart. I wasn't the other woman. Not today. The knocking came again, harder this time. Mom, are you in there? Rachel's voice. She sounded anxious, bordering on panicked. Open the door, Rachel. She's probably just sitting there staring at the wall again. That was Brandon. His voice cut through the wood like a diamond saw. I pushed myself up, letting my knees crack audibly. I shuffled to the door, dragging my feet just enough to create the sound of a weary, defeated woman. I unlocked the deadbolt, the heavy thunk echoing in the hallway, and pulled the door open. The Arizona sun blinded me for a second. Then the silhouettes resolved into people. Rachel stood there looking pale and sweaty in her off-the-rack suit. She was wringing her hands, a nervous habit she'd had since she was 6. Beside her, radiating a terrifying amount of energy, was Brandon. He didn't look like he was visiting a grieving mother. He looked like he was arriving for a hostile takeover. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than the Kelly Blue Book value of my car. His hair was slicked back with too much gel. He held a leather portfolio against his chest like a shield. Mom, Rachel said, letting out a breath of relief. She stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug. It was a real hug. I could feel the tension in her frame, the genuine worry. We were knocking for 5 minutes. I don't know what I thought. I was just in the back, baby, I said, making my voice thin and raspy. Just thinking. Brandon didn't hug me. He didn't even offer a hand. He breezed past us, his dress shoes clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. Click, clack, click, clack. It sounded like gunfire in the quiet house. Hello, Dorothy, he threw over his shoulder. He was already scanning the hallway, his eyes darting from the peeling wallpaper to the scuffed baseboards. It wasn't a look of sympathy. It was an appraisal. He was calculating square footage. He was checking for termites with his eyes. Hello, Brandon, I said, closing the door and shutting out the sun. It's good to see you. We had to come check on you, he said, marching into the living room. He stopped in the center of the rug and did a slow 360 turn. Rachel has been worried sick. She says, you haven't been answering the phone. I unplugged it, I lied. The ringing, it gave me a headache. Brandon made a noise in his throat. A sort of dismissive grunt. He walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up a small ceramic figurine, a piece Marcus had loved. He turned it over, looking for a maker's mark. Finding none, he set it back down with a little too much force. Well, that's exactly why we're here, he said, turning to face me. His smile was bright, brittle, and didn't reach his eyes. It was a shark's smile. We can't have you cutting yourself off from the world, Dorothy. It's not healthy, especially not in your condition. I shuffled to my chair and sat down, letting my hands shake as I gripped the armrests. My condition? I asked, keeping my eyes wide and confused. I don't have a condition, Brandon. Just a broken heart. Rachel came and sat on the sofa, sinking into the sagging cushions. She looked miserable. Mom, he just means, the grief. It takes a toll. We're worried about you being alone in this big old house. It's not that big, I muttered, looking around. It's just home. It's a 3-bedroom ranch built in 1978 on a half-acre lot, Brandon said instantly. He had done his homework. He walked over to the window and pulled back the heavy velvet curtain, peering out at the overgrown vegetable garden. The maintenance alone must be a nightmare. The roof looks like it has 5 years left. Max, the plumbing, I bet the pipes are galvanized steel. They rust from the inside out. Dorothy, one day, boom, and you've got a flood. He turned back to us, the portfolio clutched tight. It's a ticking time bomb, and frankly, Dorothy, you aren't equipped to handle the explosion. I looked at Rachel. She was staring at her shoes. Rachel, do you think I can't handle the house? She looked up, her eyes pleading with me not to make this hard. Mom, it's a lot of work. Dad did so much of it. The garden, the repairs, the bills. We just don't want you to be overwhelmed. Exactly, Brandon said, seizing the narrative. He walked over to the coffee table and unzipped the portfolio. The sound of the zipper was loud and harsh. He pulled out a stack of glossy brochures and fanned them out across the table like a winning poker hand. We've been doing some research, he said, his voice dropping into a tone one might use for a slow toddler. We found some wonderful options, places where you can be safe, where you can be with people your own age. I leaned forward, squinting at the brochures. The top one showed a silver-haired couple clinking champagne glasses on a balcony overlooking a manicured golf course. The text embossed in gold foil read, Solstice View, redefining the golden years. I knew Solstice View. I knew it very well. I knew the CEO of the parent company. I knew their profit margins. I knew that their gourmet dining was reheated Cisco food served on fancy plates, and I knew the price tag. Solstice View. I read slowly, sounding out the words. It looks expensive. It's premier, Brandon corrected. Top of the line, 24-hour nursing staff, heated pools, social clubs, a cinema room. It's like a cruise ship that never leaves the dock. But the money, I whispered, my voice trembling. Brandon, dear, Marcus and I, we lived on the pension. We have some savings, sure, but this place looks like it costs thousands a month. $12,000 a month for the base unit, Brandon said without blinking, plus a buy-in fee of $400,000. I let my mouth drop open. I grasped at my chest. $400. Brandon, are you mad? I don't have that kind of money. I'm just a retired clerk. Brandon's smile widened. It was predatory now. He sat down on the edge of the sofa next to Rachel, but he didn't look at her. He looked only at me, his eyes drilling into mine. Oh, Dorothy, he could. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to have the cash in the bank. You're sitting in the cash. He gestured around the room, encompassing the dusty curtains, the old TV, the worn rug. This house, the land it sits on, this neighborhood is gentrifying, Dorothy. Developers are eating up these old lots. We can sell this place. The proceeds will cover the buy-in and the first 2 years of care. Sell the house, I stammered. I looked at the walls. But Marcus's garden, his memories. We've built this life here. Memories don't pay for nursing care, Brandon said sharply. The cooing tone vanished. Memories don't fix a leaking roof. Be practical, Darth. Marcus was a practical man. He wouldn't want you rotting away in this dark old house, waiting to fall down the stairs. Rachel winced. Brandon, go easy. I am being easy, Rachel, he snapped at her, his facade cracking for a second. I am being the only adult in the room. Someone has to make the hard decisions. He turned back to me, smoothing his tie. We've already spoken to a realtor, a specialist, and well, we can handle all the paperwork for you. We can set up a trust. Rachel and I will manage the funds, Pay the bills at Solstice View directly. You won't have to worry about a thing. No more property taxes. No more electric bills. Just bingo and water aerobics. I looked from Brandon to Rachel. Rachel looked like she wanted to dissolve into the beige carpet. She knew this was wrong. She knew her father would have hated this. But she was weak. She had always been soft, preferring to avoid conflict rather than stand on principle. Brandon had figured that out on their second date, and he had been driving the car ever since. I don't know, I said, rubbing my forehead. It's all so fast. He's only been gone a week. Time is money, Dorothy, Brandon said. The market is hot right now. If we wait, interest rates could go up. Buyers could dry up. We need to list it while the iron is hot. List it, I asked. You mean put a sign in the yard? Well, actually, Brandon leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have a connection. A private holding company, Apex Holdings. They buy properties for cash as is. No inspections, no open houses, just a quick, clean closing. They've already made a preliminary offer. My internal radar pinged. Apex Holdings, cash offer. No inspection. That wasn't standard. Even for a teardown in a hot market, a developer would want to walk the lot. They made an offer, I asked, without seeing inside. They know the land value, Brandon said quickly. It's a very generous offer, Dorothy. Enough to get you into the deluxe suite at Solstice View. He reached into his portfolio again and pulled out a thick document held together with a binder clip. He placed it on top of the brochures. This is a power of attorney, he said casually. It just authorizes Rachel and me to handle the sale negotiations for you, since you know you're grieving and confused. Confused, I repeated. You forgot my name last week, he lied. At the funeral, you called me Brian. I hadn't. I knew exactly who he was. Brian was the name of my first Cocker Spaniel. You did, he nodded firmly. And you left the stove on yesterday. Rachel told me. I looked at Rachel. I did. Rachel wouldn't meet my eyes. The kettle, Mom. It boiled dry. You forgot. I hadn't boiled water yesterday. I used the electric kettle with the auto shut off. They were gaslighting me. They were rewriting reality in real time to fit their narrative of the senile old woman. I see, I whispered, shrinking back into my chair. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am losing it. Brandon beamed. Victory. It's okay, Dorothy. It happens. That's why family is here. To catch you when you fall. He tapped the document with a manicured fingernail. Click, click. Just sign this and we can start the process. We can have you in Solstice View by the 1st of the month. I stared at the document. The pen he offered was expensive, heavy. I can't sign anything today, I said, pushing the pen away. My hands, they're shaking too much, and I need to say goodbye to the house first. Brandon's smile faltered. Dorothy, really, delay is not. Give her a day, Brandon, Rachel said suddenly. Her voice was quiet but firm. She needs a day. We can come back tomorrow. Brandon glared at his wife, his nostrils flaring. He looked like he was about to bite her head off, but he calculated the odds. Pushing too hard might make the old mule dig her heels in. Fine, he said, standing up abruptly. Tomorrow. But Dorothy, pack a bag, start sorting through the clutter. Throw out the trash. We don't want to move junk to Solstice View. Okay, I whispered. Okay, Brandon. He marched to the door, not waiting for Rachel. Rachel lingered for a second, her hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Mom, she murmured. It's for the best. Really. I know, baby, I said, patting her hand with my trembling one. You're just doing what you think is right. She left. The door clicked shut. I heard the engine of their leased Audi roar to life and fade down the street. The moment the sound of the engine vanished, I stopped shaking. I stood up from the armchair, my movement fluid and sharp. No creaking knees, no slumped shoulders. I walked to the window and watched the empty street for a moment, my eyes cold. Trash, I said softly to the empty room. He called your collection trash. Marcus. I walked to the kitchen, bypassing the stove they claimed I had left on. I reached behind the loose molding above the pantry door and pulled out a sleek black burner phone. It wasn't the jitterbug flip phone I carried when Rachel was around. This was an encrypted satellite phone. I dialed a number I knew better than my own social security number. It rang once. Garrison, a deep voice answered. It's Dorothy, I said. My voice was no longer the raspy whisper of a pensioner. It was the contralto that had commanded boardrooms in Tokyo, London, and New York. They made the move. That was fast. Garrison said. The funeral was only a week ago. He's hungry. Garrison's starving. He brought brochures for Solstice View. He wants to liquidate the house. Typical. Garrison sighed. Do you want me to intervene? Not yet. He mentioned a company, Apex Holdings. He claims they made a cash offer sight unseen. He wants me to sign a power of attorney so he can sell to them. Apex Holdings. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard on the other end. Garrison was faster than most search engines. I'm not seeing a major footprint. It sounds like a shell. That's what I thought. I need you to dig into APEC. Find out who owns it. If he's selling my house to a third party, that's greed. If he's selling it to himself, that's fraud. I'm on it. How is Rachel? Compliant, I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. She's letting him drive the bulldozer. I'm sorry, Dorothy. Don't be. We tested the system, and the system failed. Now we move to phase 2. I'm going to the bank. Be careful, Dorothy. If he's moving this fast, he might have already flagged you. I'm counting on it, I said. I hung up and tossed the phone onto the granite countertop. I went to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the reflection of the window. The old woman was looking back, but the eyes were sharp. I drove my 2012 sedan to the downtown branch. The air conditioning rattled, blowing lukewarm air that smelled of dust. I parked in the handicap spot, hung my placard, and practiced my shuffle before getting out. The bank was cool and quiet, marble floors, hushed whispers. I walked up to the teller station. Stacy was there. She was a sweet girl, had been working there for 5 years. She knew me as Mrs. Thompson, the nice old lady who deposited her pension check and sometimes withdrew $50 for the grandkids she didn't have. Mrs. Thompson. She smiled, though her eyes darted to her screen with a flicker of concern. I didn't expect to see you today. I'm so sorry about Marcus. Thank you, Stacy, I said, leaning on the counter. It's been hard. I just need to make a withdrawal. A little extra for, expenses. Of course, she said. Do you have your card? I slid my debit card across the marble. She swiped it. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Then she stopped. Her smile froze. She hit a key, frowned, hit another key. Is there a problem? I asked, letting a note of panic creep into my voice. Is the machine broken? Mrs. Thompson, she said slowly. She leaned closer to the glass partition. There's a flag on your account. A flag. Did I bounce a check? No, ma'am. It's a guardianship hold pending. She looked at me, her brow furrowed. We received a fax this morning. Legal documents, a motion for emergency temporary guardianship filed by Brandon Thompson. My blood ran cold. Not fake cold, real cold. He hadn't just asked me to sign a power of attorney. He had already filed for guardianship behind my back. He was trying to bypass my consent entirely. Guardianship, I stammered, but I'm standing right here. I'm fine. There was a medical attachment. Stacy lowered her voice to a whisper. From a Dr. Everson. It says you've been diagnosed with rapid onset dementia and are a financial risk to yourself. Dr. Everson, I asked. I don't know a Dr. Everson. Ma'am, I can't give you access to the funds while this is pending. It's bank policy. The account is frozen until the court hearing, or until the applicant releases it. Frozen. I gripped the counter. But Stacy, I have bills. I have to buy groceries. I can override a small amount for necessities, she said, her eyes watering. She felt terrible. I can give you $200, but that's it until the manager clears it. $200, I repeated. Yes, please. Thank you, Stacy. She counted out the bills. Her hands were shaking almost as much as my fake ones. Mrs. Thompson, she whispered as she slid the envelope under the glass. If you didn't authorize this, you need a lawyer. This letter, it was dated yesterday. Thank you, Stacy, I said. You're a good girl. I took the cash and shuffled away, but inside, the furnace was lit. Dr. Everson, Brandon had forged a medical diagnosis. This wasn't just greed anymore. It was a felony. I pulled into my driveway and saw a white pickup truck parked on the grass. My grass. Marcus's Bermuda grass that he had nurtured like a child. A man in a reflective vest was walking around the side of the house with a laser measuring tool. He was pointing it at the eaves. I got out of my car, forgetting to shuffle for a second before catching myself. Excuse me, I called out, waving my cane. Excuse me, what are you doing? The man turned. He was big, bearded, chewing gum. He looked at me with mild annoyance. Just getting the specs for the teardown quote, ma'am, he said. Tear down, I choked. What tear down? The demolition, he said, checking his clipboard. Work order from the new owners. Apex Holdings said they want this lot scraped clean by the 15th. Scraped clean. I felt a wave of nausea. I live here. I haven't sold this house. The man shrugged. Look, lady, I just get the work orders. Paperwork says closing is set for Friday. They want the crew ready to roll on Monday. You might want to call your landlord or whoever. Apex Holdings, I said, testing the name. Where are they located? Don't know. The invoice address is some suite over on Industrial Boulevard. Now, if you don't mind, I got to measure the setback. He turned his back on me. He was measuring the distance to the property line, calculating how to destroy 40 years of memories with a bulldozer. Closing set for Friday. That was in 2 days. Brandon wasn't just moving fast. He was sprinting. He had told the contractor the deal was done before I had even signed the paper. He was that confident or that desperate. I didn't go inside. I got back in my car. I drove to Industrial Boulevard. It was the ugly part of town, a stretch of warehouses, auto body shops, and shady payday loan joints. I found the address for Apex Holdings. It wasn't a corporate headquarters. It was a strip mall with a vape shop, a dry cleaner, and a door marked Suite C. Apex Holdings was Suite C. The blinds were drawn. The sign on the door was just a piece of paper taped to the glass. Apex Holdings LLC. I parked around the back near the overflowing dumpsters. I pulled a pair of leather gloves from my glove box. Real leather, not the cheap ones I wore for the act. I approached the back door. It was a standard steel security door, but the lock was a cheap quicks. I wasn't just a tech mogul. I started as a hardware engineer. I knew how locks worked. I pulled a tension wrench and a rake pick from my pocket, tools I kept for consulting on physical security audits. It took 10 seconds. Click. I slipped inside. The air was stale, smelling of cheap coffee and mildew. The office was one room, a folding table, a laptop, a filing cabinet, and a shredder. There was nobody there. I went to the filing cabinet. Locked. Another 5 seconds with the pick. I flipped through the folders. There weren't many. Purchase agreement, 424 Oak Lane. My house. Purchase agreement, 12,200 Riverside Drive. Rachel and Brandon's house. I froze. I pulled the Riverside file. It was a pre-sale agreement. Brandon was listing his own home, the home he shared with Rachel, for sale to Apex Holdings. But why sell to himself? I moved to the desk and opened the laptop. It was password protected, but there was a sticky note on the monitor. Apex 2023. Amateur. I accessed the email. It was logged into a Gmail account. Apex Holdings Director at gmail.com. I scrolled through the sent folder. There were emails to an offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. Subject: Asset Liquidation Transfer. Boffy. The closing on the Oak Lane property is scheduled for Friday. Funds should be wired immediately to account No. 8847. The Riverside property will follow next week. Divorce filing is prepared for the 20th. I stared at the screen. The puzzle pieces slammed together. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was cashing out everything. He was buying my house and Rachel's house through a shell company he owned, likely at a fraction of the value, flipping them or holding them, and moving the money offshore. And the divorce filing. He was leaving her. He was going to strip me of my assets, strip Rachel of her home, and vanish to the Caymans with the whole pot. He was stealing the house from under me and the rug from under his wife. I took out my burner phone and snapped photos of everything, the emails, the files, the bank account numbers. I had the what. Now I needed the how. I needed to kill the medical diagnosis. Without that, he could still claim I was incompetent and force the sale. Dr. Everson's clinic was in a medical plaza that smelled of rubbing alcohol and despair. I walked in, still in my poor old Dorothy costume. The receptionist was new, young, chewing gum, bored. I need to see Dr. Everson, I said. Do you have an appointment? No, but he wrote a letter about me. A letter to my bank. She sighed. Name, Dorothy Thompson. She typed it in. I don't see a file for you. Exactly, I said loudly. I don't have a file because I've never been here. But he diagnosed me with dementia yesterday. The door to the back opened. A tall man with silver hair and a stethoscope around his neck stepped out. Dr. Everson. He looked like a TV doctor, handsome and reassuring, but his eyes were hard. What is this shouting? He asked smoothly. Dr. Everson, I said, stepping forward. I'm Dorothy Thompson. You signed a letter claiming I'm incompetent. He looked at me, then at the receptionist, then back to me. He didn't blink. Mrs. Thompson, he said, his voice dropping to a soothing, patronizing baritone. You're confused. We met yesterday. Don't you remember? Your son-in-law brought you in. I was not here yesterday, I shouted. I was at the library. See, Everson said to the receptionist, giving her a knowing look. Agitation, confusion, classic symptoms. He turned to me. Mrs. Thompson, please leave my clinic before I call the authorities. You are disturbing the patients. If you continue this, I will have to recommend immediate involuntary commitment. It was a threat, a direct, terrifying threat. If I pushed him now, he would call the cops, claim I was having an episode, and use his own forged letter as proof to have me locked up for 72 hours. In that time, Brandon would sell the house. I looked at him. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to buy the building and evict him, but I couldn't break cover yet, not without proof. I'm sorry, I stammered, shrinking back. I did come. I forget things. It's okay, Dorothy, Everson said, smiling that oily smile. Go home. Let Brandon take care of you. I turned and shuffled out, defeated. I sat in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, until my knuckles turned white. I had the apex evidence, but it was circumstantial regarding the house sale. The medical letter was the keystone. If the judge believed Everson, I was done. It would be my word against a respected doctor. I tapped on my window. I jumped. It was a woman. She was wearing scrubs, carrying a tote bag. She looked tired. It wasn't the receptionist. It was a nurse I had seen in the hallway. I rolled down the window. You're Dorothy Thompson? She asked. Her voice was tight. Yes, I'm Nora. I used to be Everson's head nurse until 10 minutes ago. What happened? He fired me. Said I was redundant. She spat the word. But really, it's because I wouldn't sign the witness line on your evaluation. My heart skipped a beat. You saw the evaluation. I saw the meeting, she said. Yesterday morning, a man in an expensive suit. He came in alone. No patient. He was in Everson's office for 20 minutes. When he left, he looked like he'd won the lottery. Everson came out with a thick envelope. He told me to notarize a letter. I read it. It said, he examined you. I refused because I never saw you. He told me to get out. Nora, I said, I need you to testify to that. She shook her head. My word against his. He'll crush me. He'll make sure I never work in this town again. Not if we have proof, I said. Did you see the envelope? I saw better than that, she whispered. She looked around the parking lot. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street, the one open 24 hours. Midnight. I have something. Midnight, I said. I'll be there. The diner was empty except for a trucker eating pie and a waitress reading a magazine. I sat in the back booth. Nora slid in opposite me at exactly 12 o'clock. She looked nervous. I shouldn't be doing this, she said. HIPAA confidentiality. Fraud isn't covered by confidentiality, Nora, I said softly, and neither is bribery. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. Everson thinks he's smart, she said. He has cameras in his office for liability, he says, but really, it's so he can record his own deals. Blackmail material, maybe. He thinks only he has the password to the server. And he's wrong. I set up the network. She smiled grimly. He forgot I have an IT degree I never used. I downloaded the footage from yesterday morning before I grabbed my purse. She slid the drive across the sticky table. It's all there. The man giving him the cash, him typing the letter, them laughing about how easy it would be to put the old woman away. I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand. It was the nail in the coffin. Thank you, Nora, I said. You just saved my life. Take him down, she said fiercely. He's a predator. I plan to, I said. I pulled a checkbook from my pocket, my real one, the one hidden in my inner jacket. I wrote a check and slid it to her. She looked at it and gasped. Mrs. Thompson, this is $50,000. A consulting fee, I said, for IT services. Cash it tomorrow and maybe take a vacation until this blows over. She looked at me, really looked at me, and realized the woman in the frayed cardigan was wearing a mask. Who are you? She whispered. Just a pensioner, I winked, with a very particular set of skills. I didn't go home. I drove to the city center. I parked in the underground garage of the Thompson Tower. The night security guard, an old friend named Ralph, nodded as I swiped my keycard. Evening, Mrs. Thompson. Working late. Early morning, Ralph. Big day. I took the private elevator to the penthouse office. The sign on the door said Thompson Digital Systems. I hadn't been CEO for 15 years, but I was still the chairman of the board, and I still kept an office. I went into the private bathroom. I showered, scrubbing off the smell of the poor old woman, the mothballs, the stale tea, the fear. I shaved my legs. I stood in front of the mirror. I stood straight. I looked at the woman in the glass. Dorothy Thompson, the woman who wrote the code that revolutionized logistical shipping, the woman who sold her company for $800 million in 1995. I walked to the closet. I pulled out my favorite suit, a charcoal Armani. I put it on. It fit like armor. I tied the silk scarf. I slid on the Patek Philippe watch. I looked like a queen. Then I took it all off. I folded the suit carefully. I put the watch back in the safe. I put back on the khaki pants from Walmart, the cardigan with the fraying cuffs, the scuffed shoes. I had to be the old woman one last time. The trap had to be sprung in the moment of their greatest confidence. I drove back to the house as the sun was coming up. I sat in my chair. I waited for the executioners. They arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. Brandon was practically vibrating. He wore a white suit today. Victory white. Rachel looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, her skin pasty. "Good morning, Dorothy," Brandon chirped as he barged in. "Big day. Are you ready?" "Ready?" I asked, blinking rapidly. For what?" "The reading of the will. Silly. We told you yesterday. Mr. Garrison's office." "Oh," I said, looking down at my hat. A wool bucket hat I grabbed for the occasion. "Right, the will. I hope Marcus left enough to cover the electric bill." Brandon laughed. It was a cruel sound. "Oh, I'm sure he did. Come on, we can't be late." I stumbled, getting into the back of their Audi. Brandon sighed loudly. "Be careful on the leather, Dorothy," he snapped. Sorry, I muttered. As we drove, Brandon chatted endlessly about renovations he was planning for their house, a new pool, a sunroom. Rachel just stared out the window. "Rachel," I said from the back seat. "Are you okay, baby?" She flinched. "I'm fine, Mom, just headache." "She's just stressed," Brandon said, checking his hair in the rearview mirror. "It's a lot of responsibility taking care of everything. But don't you worry, Dorothy. After today, everything is going to be handled." That's good," I said. "I trust you, Brandon." He smirked at his reflection. "I know you do." Garrison and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of the tallest building in Phoenix. The lobby was a cathedral of money, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, abstract art that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. We walked in. Brandon strutted. He felt he belonged here. He looked at the opulence and saw his future. I shuffled behind, clutching my hat. I looked at the receptionist. "Name?" she asked, not looking up. "Thompson," Brandon announced. "The Thompson party. To see Mr. Garrison." The receptionist looked up. She saw Brandon. She saw Rachel. Then she saw me. Her eyes widened a fraction. She knew me. I gave her a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. "Of course," she said, her voice smooth. "Mr. Garrison is expecting you in the main conference room." We rode the elevator in silence. The doors opened to a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. The table was mahogany long enough to land a plane on. Mr. Garrison sat at the head of the table. He didn't stand up. He looked like a judge waiting to pass sentence. "Please sit," he said. Brandon took the seat to his right. Rachel sat next to him. I sat at the far end, shrinking into the massive leather chair. "Thank you for seeing us, Mr. Garrison," Brandon said, flashing his teeth. "We're anxious to get this settled." "I'm sure you are," Garrison said dryly. He opened a thin file folder. "Shall we begin?" "I, Marcus Thompson, being of sound mind," Garrison began. His voice was a monotone drone. Brandon tapped his fingers on the table. Click, click, click. Item 1. Garrison read. "To the Phoenix Public Library, I bequeath my collection of first edition history books." Brandon sighed loudly. He checked his watch. Item 2. Garrison continued, ignoring him. "To my neighbor, Mrs. Martha Collins, I bequeathed my 2012 Toyota Camry." "Excuse me," Brandon interrupted. "Mr. Garrison." Garrison looked over his reading glasses. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. Is this necessary? Reading every little item? Can't we skip to the estate, the financial assets?" "It is the will, Mr. Thompson," Garrison said. "I am required to read it. But it's just trinkets," he huffed. "Books and old cars. We're here for the trust. The accounts." "Brandon, please," Rachel whispered. "Hush, Rachel," he snapped. "We have things to do. We have the closing on Friday." Garrison paused. "Closing on Dorothy's house," he said. "We're selling it to pay for her care." "I see," Garrison said. "Well, let us proceed." He read through a few more items. Bequests to charities, old jewelry to nieces. Brandon was practically vibrating with rage. He was tapping his foot now, shaking the table slightly. And finally, Garrison said, regarding the financial estate. Brandon sat up straight. This was it. Mr. Garrison, he interrupted again. Before you read that, there is something you need to know. Garrison closed the folder. And what is that? Brandon reached into his bag and pulled out the envelope from Dr. Everson. He slid it across the mahogany table, like he was laying down a royal flush. Dorothy, he said, pointing a finger at me without looking at me. She is not capable. We have had her evaluated. Dr. Everson, a specialist, has confirmed that Dorothy is suffering from advanced dementia. I let out a small gasp. Dementia, me. She's confused, agitated, and forgetful. Brandon continued, his voice gaining confidence. She is a danger to her own financial well-being. Therefore, as her closest relatives, Rachel and I are asserting our right to immediate guardianship and control over the estate assets. We need the funds transferred to a trust under our control for her protection. He sat back, crossing his arms. He had done it. He had played the ace. I see, Garrison said. He picked up the letter. He studied it. Dr. Everson, rapid onset cognitive decline, incapable of managing affairs. Exactly, Brandon said. So whatever the will says about her inheriting, it needs to come to us. This is a very serious document, Garrison said. Dated yesterday. Yes, Brandon said. We took her in yesterday morning. Garrison looked at me. Dorothy, do you remember going to the doctor yesterday? I shook my head, my lip trembling. I don't think so. Was I? See, Brandon said. She doesn't remember. Garrison looked back at the letter. Then he looked at Brandon. The corner of his mouth twitched. A sound escaped Garrison. It was a snort. Brandon frowned. Excuse me. Garrison tried to cover it with a cough, but it failed. A deep rumbling laugh erupted from his chest. He laughed so hard his glasses slid down his nose. It echoed in the silent room, bouncing off the glass walls. Mr. Garrison, Brandon stood up, outraged. This is a solemn occasion. Why are you laughing? Garrison took a deep breath, wiping a tear from his eye. I apologize, he wheezed. It's just, the audacity, the sheer unmitigated amateurism of it all. Amateurism. Brandon's face went red. That is a medical diagnosis from a board-certified physician. It's a forgery, Brandon, Garrison said, his voice suddenly dropping to absolute zero. The laughter vanished instantly. And a lazy one at that. How dare you? Brandon hissed. I will sue you for slander. No, Garrison said, you won't. He pressed a button on his laptop. A screen descended from the ceiling. The projector flared to life. It was grainy footage, black and white, but clear enough. It showed an office, Dr. Everson's office. Brandon was sitting in the chair. Everson was behind the desk. Audio crackled. Everson, this is highly irregular. Mr. Thompson, writing a diagnosis without seeing the patient. Brandon, oh, come on, doctor, she's old. She's going to be senile eventually. Let's just speed up the timeline. I need control of the assets by Friday. Everson, it will cost you. The risk is significant. Brandon, $10,000 cash now, and another $10,000 when the guardianship goes through. On the screen, Brandon reached into his bag and pulled out a thick stack of bills. He handed it to the doctor. The video froze on the image of the money changing hands. The room was dead silent. Rachel was staring at the screen, her mouth open. Brandon was frozen, his face draining of all color. He looked like a statue made of ash. She whispered. That's fake, deepfake AI. It was provided by your nurse, Nora, Garrison said, along with a sworn affidavit that Dorothy Thompson was never in the building. He tossed another file onto the table. It slid across and hit Brandon's hand. I also have the file from Apex Holdings, Garrison said, the shell company you registered in your mother's maiden name, the emails detailing your plan to sell Dorothy's house, sell Rachel's house, and wire the funds to the Caymans before filing for divorce. Rachel made a sound like she had been punched in the gut. She turned slowly to look at her husband. Divorce, she whispered. You were leaving me. Brandon didn't look at her. He was staring at me. His eyes were wide with horror. How? He breathed. How did you get this? Because, Garrison said, you aren't playing checkers, Mr. Thompson. You aren't even playing chess. You entered a cage match with a lioness, and you brought a plastic spoon. He picked up the will again. Now, about that $95 million you were so worried about. Brandon flinched at the number. Marcus did have a portfolio worth $95 million, Garrison said, but it wasn't his. Not really. He read from the document. The asset portfolio known as the Sandbox Trust, established by my wife, represents play money she gifted me to keep my mind sharp. Per the terms of the trust, upon my death, the principal and all interest reverts to the original grantor. Grantor, Brandon whispered. The person who gave him the money, Garrison explained. The person who made the money. He pointed a long finger down the table at me. It all goes back to Dorothy. No. Brandon shook his head frantically. That's impossible. She's a clerk. She's poor. Look at her shoes. I stood up. I didn't push myself up on the armrests. I just rose. I took off the bucket hat and tossed it onto the table. I reached up and adjusted my collar. My hands were steady as rocks. My shoes are comfortable, Brandon, I said. My voice was the CEO voice now, resonant, commanding, and my car is reliable. I don't need an Audi to know who I am. Who are you? He stammered, backing away until he hit the wall. I'm the founder of Thompson Digital Systems, I said calmly. We wrote the code that runs the logistics for half the shipping companies in the world. I sold it in 1995 for $800 million. $800 million. Rachel wheezed. We hid it, I said, looking at my daughter. Because we wanted you to be a woman, Rachel, not a trust fund baby. We wanted you to find a partner who loved you, not the balance sheet. I looked at Brandon. We failed. You tricked us. Brandon screamed, his shock turning into hysterical rage. You lied to us for years. That's entrapment. It's privacy, I said, and you proved exactly why we needed it. You were going to put me in a home, sell my house, steal everything. I was doing what needed to be done. He shrieked. You were old. You were useless. That money was sitting there doing nothing. And now, Garrison interrupted, it will continue to do nothing for you. Garrison opened a final folder. It was red. The will does have one bequest for you, Brandon, and for you, Rachel. Brandon's eyes lit up with a desperate manic hope. What is it? Debt forgiveness, Garrison said. Debt? He blinked. We don't owe him money. Oh, but you do, Garrison said. He started pulling out spreadsheets. Your student loans paid off by an anonymous donor 3 years ago. That was Marcus, $50,000. Your luxury apartment lease when Rachel was between jobs, paid by Marcus, $18,000. The down payment on the Audi paid by Marcus. The wedding, Garrison waved a hand, $80,000 paid by Marcus. He looked at the total. In the last 5 years, Marcus Thompson covertly paid $312,000 to support your lifestyle because he couldn't bear to see his daughter struggle even if she married a shark. He closed the file. His will forgives this debt. That is your inheritance. You leave this room with a clean slate. Zero balance. That's it. Brandon screamed. $300,000 grand. There's almost $1 billion. Not for you, I said. Never for you. The door to the conference room opened. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in, followed by a detective in a suit, Brandon Thompson. The detective asked. Brandon looked around wildly like a trapped animal. What? Who called you? We received a file this morning, the detective said, regarding forgery, medical fraud, and attempted grand larceny. We have a warrant. No. Brandon lunged toward the table, grabbing for the papers, for the evidence, for anything. It's a lie. She's senile. She's crazy. The officers grabbed his arms. He kicked and screamed, his white suit twisting. Rachel, he screamed. Rachel, do something. Tell them she's crazy. Rachel sat in her chair, staring at the table. She didn't move. She didn't look up. Rachel, he shrieked as they dragged him out. You coward. I did this for us. The door closed. His screams faded down the hallway. The room was quiet again. Just me, Garrison, and Rachel. Rachel was weeping, silent, shaking sobs. I walked over to her. I stood behind her chair. Rachel, I said. She looked up. Her face was a ruin. Mom, I didn't know about the fraud, about the Caymans. I swear. I believe you, I said. And I did. She wasn't smart enough to pull that off. But that's not the problem. What? You didn't know about the crimes, but you knew he treated me like dirt. You stood there in my living room while he called my home a teardown, while he called your father's memories trash, while he planned to lock me away in a warehouse for the dying. I thought it was for the best, she sobbed. No, I said sharply. You thought it was easiest. You let him bully you. You let him bully me. You chose his comfort over my dignity. You chose silence. I leaned down so I was eye level with her. You aren't a criminal, Rachel, but you are a coward, and that hurts more. She put her head in her hands. What do I do now? He's gone. The house is. She was selling the house. Yes, I said. You're homeless. You're broke and you're alone. I stood up. You have a choice, baby. You can chase after him, try to bail him out, and go down with a ship. Or you can walk out of here, get a job that you earn, and start rebuilding your spine. Will you help me? She asked, looking up with pleading eyes. The money? No, I said. Not a dime. If I give you money now, you'll never learn. The bank of mom and dad is closed permanently. I patted her shoulder. It wasn't a comforting pat. It was a goodbye. Grow up, Rachel. It's late, but it's not too late. I nodded to Garrison. Thank you, Arthur. Excellent work. Always a pleasure. Dorothy, Garrison smiled. Shall I cancel the listing on the house? Please, and send Nora a bonus. A big one. I walked out of the conference room. I left my daughter crying at the mahogany table. It broke my heart, but a bone has to be broken to be reset properly. I took the elevator down. I walked through the lobby. The receptionist smiled at me this time. I smiled back. I pushed through the glass doors into the heat of the Phoenix afternoon. It was hot, dry, and smelled of desert sage. It smelled like freedom. I walked to the corner and pulled out my real phone. I scrolled past the contacts for my broker, my lawyer, the DA. I found the one that mattered. Martha, I said when she picked up double quotes, Dorothy, everything okay? Better than okay, old friend. It's done. How did it go? Let's just say the trash has been taken out. I loosened my scarf and unbuttoned the top button of my frayed cardigan. Listen, Martha, is your RV still in storage? Yeah, waiting on parts. Why? Forget the parts. I'm buying us a new one, something with a full kitchen and a queen bed. And I'm buying the RV park. You're what? I'm tired of pretending to be poor, Martha. I'm ready to see the country. Meet me at the park in an hour. I'm bringing the wine and the good steaks. I hung up and looked at the sky. It was blue, infinite. Thanks, Marcus, I whispered. We did good. I walked down the street, not shuffling, but striding. The simple old woman was gone. Dorothy Thompson was back.